Beneath the surface of global trade, a phantom fleet is rewriting the rules. Hundreds of aging tankers now operate in the shadows, orchestrating billion-dollar oil runs that quietly bypass Western price caps. While headlines focus on sanctions, a hidden network of shell companies, registry switches, and midnight maneuvers fuels a gray market explosion, with Gabon's ship registry swelling by 138% and over 2,000 vessels falling off the legal map. The official ledgers say the cap is working, but has the world seriously underestimated just how easy it is to slip off the radar? In this documentary, we uncover the mechanics and stakes of the dark tankers, quietly redrawing the lines of global power. A single voyage can turn a rusted tanker into a money machine, and that's the magnet pulling thousands of ships into the shadows. The math is simple, and the stakes are enormous. When the G7 set a price cap on Russian crude at $60 a barrel, the market didn't just pause, it split. On one side, oil trades above the cap, sometimes reaching $75 a barrel. On the other, sanctioned barrels move at a discount, but still well above official ceilings. That gap, often $10 or more per barrel, creates instant profit for anyone able to move oil off the books. For an operator with a 100,000-ton tanker, a single run can clear over $1 million in gross margin, just from moving discounted cargo to a buyer willing to pay near-market rates. Multiply that by hundreds of voyages, and the numbers climb into the billions. The Kyiv School of Economics estimates that, in 2024 alone, Russia earned an extra $9.4 billion from oil sold above the price cap, routed through this parallel fleet. Western analysts say the shadow fleet now handles up to 80% of Russia's seaborne crude exports, an operation on a scale that rivals the world's biggest shipping lines. The lure isn't just the cargo spread. The economics of the ships themselves have flipped. Before sanctions, tankers older than 15 years were headed for the scrapyard, too expensive to run and too risky to insure. Now, those same vessels fetch premium prices. Aframax and Suezmax tankers, once worth $10 to $15 million on the secondhand market, have seen prices jump by 40% in 2023 and another 10% in 2024. Owners who once faced scrap value are suddenly fielding offers from shadow fleet brokers, often paid in cash through shell companies. Scrapping rates for large tankers have plunged to almost zero. Every hull that can still float is pressed into service. But running dark isn't cheap. Freight rates for sanctioned cargoes are 2 to 3 times higher than for mainstream trades. Insurance, when it's available, comes from alternative providers in places like the UAE or Hong Kong, with premiums that can be 10 times the industry norm. The risk of seizure, blacklisting, or environmental disaster gets priced in. Yet, even with these costs, the profit margin on a single sanctioned voyage dwarfs anything seen in the regulated market. This is why the shadow fleet keeps growing, even as enforcement tightens. Every new sanction, every flagged vessel just pushes the price gap wider, making the next run even more lucrative. As of early 2025, estimates put the shadow fleet at over 1,000 tankers worldwide. Each one is a floating asset, older than the average commercial ship, often registered under a flag of convenience and insured by a company that may not exist on paper a year from now. The fleet's average age now tops 19 years, a full decade older than the global norm. For ship owners, brokers, and middlemen, the calculation is clear. Higher risk, higher reward. As long as the price gap lasts, there's a fortune to be made running off the radar. And with every successful voyage, the shadow fleet's operators prove just how hard it is to police a market where the rules of economics matter more than the rules on paper. Tankers in the shadow fleet don't all look the same, but they share a familiar set of traits. Most are well past their prime. Average age now tops 19 years, with some hulls pushing past 25. These ships were once headed for scrap. Now, they've been pulled back into service, patched up just enough to pass inspection, and handed new paperwork that tells a different story than their real history. The first clue lies in the paperwork shuffle. Ownership records rarely lead to a household name. Instead, they point to shell companies in places like the Seychelles or the UAE, with directors who may never have set foot on a ship. The registry on the hull is just as slippery. Flags move from Panama to Gabon to the Comoros in a matter of weeks. In the first quarter of 2024, Gabon's shipping registry ballooned by 138%, driven almost entirely by tankers looking for a safe harbor from sanctions. At the peak, Gabon's tonnage hit 7.4 million gross tons, second only to Liberia in Africa, before much of it vanished again as vessels reflagged elsewhere. Next comes the insurance shell game. Traditional coverage from the international group of P&I clubs is out of reach for these ships. Instead, policies appear from companies in Hong Kong or Dubai, sometimes with little more than a phone number and a promise. When authorities ask for proof, the documents surface, but whether any payout would follow in a disaster is anyone's guess. On the water, the fleet's behavior sketches a clear pattern. Many tankers run with their automatic identification systems, AIS, turned off for stretches at sea. The gaps line up with known ship-to-ship transfer zones, where oil can move from one hull to another, muddying the trail. In the Gulf of Laconia, off Greece, and off the coast of Ceuta, dozens of these handoffs happen every month. The transfer itself is a dance against the weather. Wind below 25 knots, swell under 3 meters. Anything rougher, and the risk of collision or spill jumps sharply. A 5-step playbook has emerged. Switch the flag, drop out of AIS range, conduct a ship-to-ship transfer, reflag, or swap insurance, then deliver the cargo to a buyer who's willing to look the other way. Each step leaves just enough of a paper trail to keep the ship moving, but not enough for regulators to pin down liability. The average shadow fleet tanker might change flags twice in a single voyage, with ownership and insurance records updated just as quickly. The numbers behind this network are staggering. Registry data shows a surge in new open registries across Africa and Asia since 2022, with some countries posting year-on-year growth of over 100%. Meanwhile, scrapping rates for large tankers have collapsed, and the second-hand market is flooded with buyers willing to pay cash for vessels others have written off. The result is a floating network that's older, more opaque, and harder to police than anything seen in the mainstream shipping world. Each of these traits, age, paperwork, behavior, forms a layer in the shadow fleet's armor. Together, they create a system built to move oil where it isn't supposed to go, and to keep the real players off the radar. The next time a rusted tanker appears on the horizon, odds are its history is written in pencil, not ink. A tanker flagged in Liberia 1 week, Gabon the next, and Comoros by month's end. That's how the chameleon survives. Shell companies flip paperwork as quickly as a dealer shuffles cards. The real owner? Hidden behind a trust in the Seychelles, then a holding in Dubai, then a director who lists a post office box as his only address. This isn't a bug in the system. It's the system itself. In the first quarter of 2024, Gabon's registry exploded by 138%, jumping to 7.4 million gross tons. Almost overnight, it became the second largest in Africa, just behind Liberia. Most of that tonnage didn't stay long. The moment a registry drew too much attention, ships jumped again, sometimes within days. The paperwork trail leads nowhere. One vessel might switch flags twice on a single voyage, with new ownership records filed each time. The registry office in Ajaman, UAE, handles the filings for Gabon, far from African waters, collecting fees and issuing certificates with little more than an online form. A diagram of the average shadow tanker's corporate stack would show a tangle of shelf companies, nominee directors, and offshore accounts. The point isn't to hide from everyone, just to make the chase too expensive to bother. For every new round of sanctions, a fresh company springs up, ready to buy or manage another ship. The true owner's name is never on a single document. Gabon's surge isn't a one-off. Across Africa and Asia, new open registries have doubled or even tripled in size since 2020. 22. Most of them catering to vessels too risky for mainstream flags. The fees are paid up front, the questions are few, and the oversight is almost non-existent. The chameleon knows the rules. Keep the paperwork moving, keep the ship in business. If a registry freezes a vessel, another flag is waiting, another shell company is standing by. This constant shuffle keeps regulators guessing. By the time enforcement catches up, the ship is already working under a new name, a new flag, and a new set of papers. For the shadow fleet, opacity isn't just a side effect, it's the whole business model. A declared route tells one story. The workaround route tells another. On paper, a Gabon-flagged tanker logs a direct run, Black Sea to Asia, straight through the Bosphorus, Suez, and out to the Indian Ocean. The paperwork lists a single buyer, a single flag, a single insurer. Every stop is accounted for. The declared distance is just over 9,000 nautical miles, with each checkpoint falling inside established shipping corridors, where port state authorities and insurance inspectors can, in theory, check every document and ask every question. But the workaround route is a study in misdirection. Instead of sailing the shortest path, the chameleon takes a detour. After clearing the straits, the ship veers south, hugging the edge of international waters. The automatic identification system drops off for a day. No signal, no trace. That blackout almost always lines up with a known transfer zone, maybe off the southern tip of Greece, maybe near Ceuta. There, a ship-to-ship handoff takes place. Oil moves quietly from one hull to another, sometimes blending cargoes, sometimes swapping paperwork. The transfer window is tight, wind under 25 knots, swell below 3 meters, anything rougher, and the risk of collision or spill spikes. Once the handoff is done, the chameleon's AIS flickers back on. Now, the ship's flag may have changed. Comoros or Liberia, depending on which registry is least scrutinized that month. The insurance certificate, if anyone asks, matches the new flag. The paperwork shows a new owner, a new management company, a new backstory. The ship resumes its journey, but the route is now longer by nearly 2,000 nautical miles. That extra distance is a small price for what it buys. Evasion of port inspections, sidestepping insurance verification, and slipping past the radar of price cap enforcement. The declared path is built for oversight. The workaround is built for ambiguity. On a map, the difference is obvious. One line is direct, the other loops and bends, darting through legal gray zones and blind spots. For regulators, each detour means another missed checkpoint, another lost chance to enforce the rules. For the chameleon, that detour is the difference between a seized cargo and $1 million payday. The longer the route, the more invisible the real trade becomes. Somewhere off the southern tip of Europe, the ghost slows to a crawl. On the chart, it is still showing course for Asia, but the automatic identification system goes silent. No signal, no trace, just open water and a 100,000-ton hull drifting in the shadow of a weather forecast. For the next 12 hours, maybe 36 if the wind holds steady, the window is open. Anything above 25 knots, and the plan is scrapped. Swell above 3 meters, and nobody risks a collision. But tonight, the sea is forgiving. Barely a ripple, breeze holding just under the limit. A second tanker, flagged under a different registry, waits nearby. Both ships edge together, fenders out, crews ready with heavy lines and radio silence. The transfer begins, crude flowing from hull to hull, watched only by the moon and a handful of encrypted messages. This is the heart of the workaround. No port, no customs, no inspectors. Every minute counts. The longer the ships are locked together, the higher the risk that someone, Coast Guard, satellite, or rival operator, spots a pattern in the dark. The choreography is tight. Both captains know the limits. If the wind picks up, hoses are drained and lines cut loose. If the swell builds, the ships break apart, cargo incomplete, risk avoided. But with luck and discipline, the swap finishes before dawn. New paperwork is ready. New flag already painted over the old. The Ghost's AIS flickers back to life, now reporting under a fresh registry, a new owner, and a new destination. To anyone watching, it is just another tanker on a long-haul run, except the cargo, the flag, and the story have all changed in the space of a single night. The real route is never a straight line. Every blackout, every transfer, every switch is a calculated move to stay ahead of the digital dragnet. For the Ghost and its crew, the only constant is the clock and the weather. Miss the window, and the risk doubles. But catch it, and a single run can clear $1 million. No questions asked, no record worth trusting. High above the shipping lanes, a new kind of surveillance grid is watching. Synthetic aperture radar, SAR for short, cuts through clouds and darkness, scanning for metal hulls where no signal should be. Unlike a ship's automatic identification system, which can be switched off at the flick of a switch, SAR works, whether a vessel wants to be seen or not. The system bounces radar waves off the ocean surface, picking up the sharp, geometric signature of a tanker, even in the dead of night or under a blanket of fog. Analysts and monitoring centers fuse this radar data with public AIS feeds, running anomaly detection algorithms that flag anything out of place. A ship that vanishes from digital maps but still appears as a glowing shape on the radar, or a sudden gap in a familiar route that doesn't match weather patterns or port schedules. In recent years, this fusion of radar and AIS has exposed hundreds of Shadow Fleet tankers trying to slip through the net. A vessel may go dark on its broadcast, but the radar still tracks its slow drift toward a known transfer zone. Patterns emerge, AIS off for 12 hours, then back on with a new flag or destination, always just outside the reach of port authorities. The algorithms catch these moves, comparing thousands of daily radar scenes with ship registries and insurance filings, building a mosaic of activity that's harder and harder to erase. The oversight grid is tightening. Satellite constellations now deliver images every few hours, not days. AI models learn from each new trick. The spoofed positions, the sudden course changes, the telltale pauses off the coast of Ceuta, or in the Gulf of Laconia, Lukochnia. Even as dark fleet operators invent new ways to disappear, the data keeps piling up. A tanker's unique radar shadow, a gap in its digital trail, a spike in hull insurance claims from a shell company that didn't exist last year. For every ship that tries to hide, there's a growing archive of evidence, enough to map the real flow of oil, even when the paperwork says otherwise. In 2024, 23, over 2,000 tankers, many more than 19 years old, operated outside major oversight, moving billions in oil above the price cap. Registry records show Gabon's flagged fleet grew by 138% in a single year, while ownership documents reveal companies changing hands in less than 48 hours. Satellite radar and AI now detect tankers that once vanished by switching off their AIS transponders, but full transparency remains elusive. Authorities can track ship-to-ship transfers and flag hops, yet details about the true owners and final buyers are often missing or classified. The scale and sophistication of this ghost fleet have redrawn maritime trade routes and weakened price cap enforcement. Evidence confirms the system's reach, but key questions, such as the identities behind shell companies and long-term safety risks, are still unanswered. As regulators adapt and technology advances, one fact remains. The shadow fleet continues to shape global oil flows, operating in the gaps between regulation and detection.